Good morning. And today, of course, right, like the streaming platforms being very consumer facing, right, so it's very interesting to talk about because it is very like ingrained to like natural behaviors. And as part of this, and so recently, of course, you have like Twitch, you have YouTube Live, you had Mixer, Facebook, gaming, all like TikTok Live. So it's a very dynamic space, a lot of competitors, and clearly for a reason. It's a way to get retention, acquire, like, use a take rate, subscriptions, all of that. So it's definitely a very solid corporate interest. And so recently, I started kicking off, of course, like creators switching from platform to platform, but then the platforms themselves doing things. And so, not covering new ground with this, but we could we could go Twitch changing policies, or potentially, of course, not confirmed, but potentially posturing, or at least actively considering, you know, reducing, uh, essentially making terms less favorable to streamers, to creators, because of various reasons, or whatnot. Um, but so there's a lot of discussion of it. It's generally from, say, from big Twitch streamers themselves, like Ludwig, or the streamers themselves who are switching, doing videos and stuff. So they can certainly speak to the actual their reasons of like the actual streamers of the content. Um, I I'm not necessarily in a position to talk about those things. Of course, like YouTube is like, my video repository. I use Twitch just because if I'm recording a video, I may as well be live, and I don't need to be redundant with YouTube Live. Uh, Compared to Twitch, engage different audiences. But notwithstanding that, right? So instead of talking about the qualitative aspects of these dynamics, that like Ludwig and Moist Critical and those guys can talk about in way more detail than I can, I instead want to look at the numbers, right? Because kind of lines up with my interests, and potentially more of my circle of competence compared to somebody else's. And so, right, because, right, YouTube, or Alphabet, is a public company. Amazon is a public company, and so the 10K, the annual report, I'm looking at 2021, is ultimately, again, I'm of the opinion that really, like, if you want to know how the world actually works, and open up a 10K, because many of the most dynamic companies in the world, from like U.S. companies to Chinese ones, like, are public, and so they are a fiduciary responsibility to be truthful and to lay out the picture. And so from that, these guys will give you a pretty good proxy for what's actually going on. And so the biggest thing is just people do like 10K analysis and look at like how many times like Roblox mentioned child safety or moderation compared to Facebook's or S1, the initial document to go public. And so just doing a quick thing for Twitch. I'm not for YouTube for Alphabet. Alphabet breaks out YouTube revenue specifically as its own line item. I'm not sure and certainly, right, it would make sense to do so. When it's $29 billion of annual revenue, like 29 billion, that's a significant amount. Of course, questions about like, say, like the actual profitability quote of say that segment itself of say YouTube compared to all the visual of the storage and all that. But I am looking, but when I look up I'm on Amazon's 10K, right? The annual report, probably the most important document to look at to know what a company does. And I Control F, Twitch. I get 3 results, and they do not break it out as a line item. And if we go to income statement, okay, here, net sales is everything. Yeah, I'm not sure if they break it out for Amazon. AW. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure if they break it out, and that kind of says it, right? Like because a company, of course, you have to disclose like your total revenues, and you have right you have to disclose that to your shareholder to being a public company, but you don't. But you have discretion over how granular you want to be about what you break out. Some companies like Amazon, like they very recently started breaking out their advertising revenue. Recently, and right and before, I believe in this report, like they broke out advertising revenue, but before they just didn't. And there's reasons to not want to be super specific, right? Because it's a public document. You don't necessarily want to clue in the competition as to what you're doing. And so certainly the Amazon is under no certainly being a trillion plus dollar company, certainly under 279 billion annual revenue, certainly under no obligation to break out Twitch revenue, and certainly out of the pie that is 280 billion. It's very questionable as to how much Twitch contributes to that bottom line, right? But certainly from that, right? It just from a very cursory glance, it does show some, because ultimately, like Twitch and YouTube aren't independent companies. They wouldn't be to where they are today if they were independent companies, right? They are part of a parent. No, parent saying a parent company is not the it's not the right technical term. I do. It's like I'm sure I'm annoying some people with more granular knowledge, but they're part of a bigger organization functionally, right? Like it's not an independent business; they're a business of businesses. But it does show some, right? Whereas YouTube worthy enough to have its own line item, Twitch not. And of course, it's not apples to apples because Twitch is not making 29 billion, so it's not. Or it is arguably not worthy of that discussion of being a line item, which it's not. Well, like yeah, specific revenue is 2.3 billion. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't deserve its own line item. But the point is, but that ultimately does say something when we're looking at Twitch having to be more aggressive with its like revenue and monetization and being less generous to creators because it has to carve out its margin. And again, it's to the degree that Amazon is pushing them to be more quote unquote I question Twitch's route to profitability. I don't have the metrics, but I don't feel like it's a push from Amazon for of course Amazon in the most recent quarter last week had some challenges uh, with like the current environment, but I don't think that's all of a sudden is causing Andy Jassy to start pushing on a on a the CEO of Twitch, a Shearer, I believe, who responded to a tweet. I replied to one of his tweets, and he replied to it. He replied to my reply to him. So I suppose in that sense, that's why I continue to do these recording sessions on Twitch, because the CEO of Twitch responded to one of my replies to him, which is pretty cool. And yeah, probably one of the cool things about Twitter, right? But notwithstanding that, but ultimately it does say that, right? Just that YouTube operates at a significant different scale, right? 29 billion, and arguably YouTube has way more daily active. I believe YouTube, like the daily watch time, has decreased by 8 minutes in the most recent quarter, but still, right? A massive, ubiquitous like video platform for most of the world, and so Twitch isn't comparable. And so in that sense, it's of course there's the qualitative apples to pears of like perhaps like Lud was talking about how like YouTube, it's a bit of a hassle to go live. The YouTube doesn't have a designated, or like YouTube's specific live section doesn't show you. It shows you replays of stuff, but it's not as like not as quote unquote good as it is on Twitch per se. And so of course there's the qualitative stuff. But ultimately, when we're thinking about why Twitch has to be concerned about its margins, about its monetization, and how aggressive it has to be, you can just look at just the fact that, and compare to YouTube, and YouTube being able to offer to poach creators with more generous terms, it's just a simple function of the fact that Twitch and YouTube are just fundamentally very different businesses, and certainly from the actual top line contribution of YouTube versus Twitch, it's very different as well. So it's I feel like all discussion. Of course, it's not the most novel insights. I'm just showing you the annual report of these guys, but it's an aspect like I don't think is being just certainly among like the very like casual like actual Twitch YouTube viewers. Of course, like buy side or sell side analysts are talking about these things, but it hasn't really entered. That's something I've seen among like the more casual, like like regular or like things that people would actually interact with, like those creators looking at the actual quote unquote. It's not really quantitative, just looking at this, but more like factual sense. And so, but yeah. So is it surprising that Twitch is doing what it's doing? No. Is Andy Jassy pushing Twitch to become a profitable segment? I don't think so. It's not really that. But does it explain why YouTube is growing in the live space and is able to use its network effect and scale to poach creators and quote unquote subsidize? I don't think YouTube is subsidizing their YouTube gaming arm or whatever, but it certainly can seem that way. So again, when we're talking about the massive difference in scale, but that's that. And so ultimately, for all this talk about AWS being spun off and that's that net sales. Let me find a better income state. But yeah, certainly, of course, if you're ever bored, which is not really a good excuse to be bored these days, just look up the 10K of the company that you interact with. I think it does. It will show you things that you wouldn't otherwise realize. Just how big like their physical presence is in terms of like property, like the table we just scrolled past. All that business perspectives. Here we are. Yeah, scrolling a bit down the. Okay, here we are. Net income. Oh, they start with the cash flow. Normally, you start with like income, balance sheet, cash flow statement. It seems that Amazon does it differently. Now, technology content, that's an expense line item, so it's not actual Twitch's contribution. But yeah, but to my point that it like Amazon itself is not pushing Twitch to be more aggressive with its margins and take rate. It's not coming. I sincerely doubt it's coming from the C-suite, from Andy Jassy, because it's just there's certainly no the long term, like the CLV, like customer lifetime value, or the net present value, whichever calculation of what Twitch could be with its user base and integration of Prime, I think certainly outweighs whatever margin consideration. So I think it's more so just Twitch optimizing any largesse that it previously did have. And so certainly when we're thinking about Twitch and Amazon, that might be a bit of a weird thing to say. Certainly when they have Amazon has 36 billion in cash, but it's just basic corporate pruning. So it's not really. But Twitch, it's just not significant. It's not significant enough to have its own thing in the 10K. It's part of Amazon's ancillary services, which builds out its Prime offering, but it's not really its own thing. But so ultimately, I'm repeating what I said. But ultimately, when we think about YouTube and Twitch and why Mixer and Facebook and all that, like if you really want to think about what these companies are doing and why they're making the policy changes that affect the creators you watch, or maybe your own content creation, then it really just go to look up the 10K on their investor relations site, Edgar from the SEC Edgar, and just look it up. Just look up your 10K, Control F the platform, and I think that'll give you a good indication of where. And certainly, and if anything, then you'll realize that YouTube's 29 billion, I think, is a mighty tall ask for anybody. I suppose maybe ByteDance / TikTok might, but even it's not comparable. But yeah, so ultimately, Twitch's changes again to the degree that it really matters, like. Not really. It's not like anything's being put behind a paywall, right? But certainly when you think about Twitch and how perhaps Twitch isn't being the most user friendly, or it's hurting creators, then you can just look at and Google is better. Then again, just look at the actual financials, and they'll paint the real picture, that can't be fudged or changed, right? Because the numbers are the numbers; they speak for themselves. So thank you for listening. It's been a while since I uploaded a video, so just wanted to get something out there, and so they're definitely interesting. And again, encourage to check out 10K. But thank you for listening. Make your considerations as to if Twitch is doing the right thing, the bad thing. Is YouTube a good platform? Is YouTube doing the right thing? All that. And of course, make those considerations. But ultimately, looking at the numbers themselves, especially when we're talking about these companies that are by proxy public, certainly can only help inform the discussion. So thank you for listening, and let me know what you think.